You have to remember that at the time, I was patron of the NSPCC's Full Stop campaign, so I was close up with what was going on in those time about getting rid of abuse to children. So I knew what the things were to look for, but I never saw them.
So you would have made that connection because you stayed with him, you were a visitor, a guest on many occasions at his homes, and nothing struck you as suspicious?
Nothing.
During that whole time?
Nothing.
Just for the record.
All right. Chase, what do you got?
We see a lot here. And in this video, we see him start to develop his narrative. And we see a little more lip-licking behavior, which we call hygienic gestures. We see the stroking of the hands back and forth, and this is a pacifying gesture, I think. It's meant to calm him down a little bit. He knows the questions are getting a little bit more difficult, and you'll typically see him do this for the rest of the interview after he answers a difficult question to kind of calm himself back down. And you'll see his hands and feet go crazy, and the further a body part is from the head, the harder it is to control when you've got adrenaline flowing through you. So his foot is in a great spot for an interrogator to watch that happen.
Excellent. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so a couple of things. He does steepling, this thing where you put your hands up this way, and everybody who's ever watched The Simpsons, Mr. Burns is like, excellent. It's an authority figure. It's also a compromising thing because your hands rotate as you're feeling more and more compromised. As I want to agree with you, my hands will do that. And then even you'll see people's hands upside down as they feel compromised. I have a great picture, Mark, of Tony Blair standing in front of Condoleezza Rice with his hands down like that. Yep. Really bad idea. So it's a gimme. If you're a body language guy, then a person starts doing this, I love it because I can watch your hands rotate as I get control. So wonderful tool. And you can see him also grinding his fingertips. To your point, Chase, he's starting to adapt, trying to get comfortable. He'll rub, but he's trying to contain that body language in his fingertips. Somebody's coached him to pay attention. There's also, he says in here, he takes holy ground again. I was the saint looking out for children who are being abused. And later in the same interview says, well, I wouldn't have noticed anything like that because I wouldn't have suspected it. Well, come on, you can't have it both ways. So I think he steps into a bear trap here that she uses against him later.
It's a resume statement.
It is. It is. And later, when he says, I would not notice it, he's discounting his resume, which is beautiful.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, so let's just dig into that resume statement because I think it's really important for people to understand what he's talking about there. The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And he's saying, well, you have to remember. So he uses this a lot. He uses ideas like, well, it's funny, or, you need to understand, or you have to remember. You have to remember. At that time, I was the patron of the NSPCC. So that he was the father of it. He's saying, there is absolutely no way that I could ever be involved in anything like that because I've taken a patron position. And of course, we know that's not factual. And in fact, Britain has a history of people hiding in plain sight and using these institutions and founding them and certainly supporting them in order that they can look, clean. So as a public, we're not really buying it. It's a foolish move of his, and it doesn't make any sense. And I think because of all of those things, we know he's not connected with his audience at the moment. He has no help at the moment. I think, Greg, to your point, he's going back to coaching that he's had. He may be going back to resistance to interrogation that he may have had as a helicopter pilot. My guess is he would certainly have had that. He's keeping himself very tucked in, very still, but he's making some classic errors of how not to perform in this kind of situation. And I believe it's because he has no help at this point. He's on his own. He has no advice, and he's not taking any advice.
To your point, Mark, resistance to interrogation has its place, and the person who knows what they're doing, and I won't point out what they're doing, certainly has some tools. I will say that the one thing he does very well throughout this thing is he is a master of stammering for effect. And it's his pattern. It's how he controls a conversation. He sets up the next sentence. Scott, you and I talked a little bit about this. You have some more insight on that piece, and I think you could add that in here.
Yeah. So what's bugging me here is we're seeing him explain that he's the guy in charge, or he's one of the main guys who understands what this is, what it is when people are trafficking children. And then he says he knows what these things are to look for. However, he doesn't see them. And I think as trainers, we know what those things are, and we'd be able to point them out instantly as soon as we saw something like that.
You have to remember that at the time, I was patron of the NSPCC's Full Stop campaign, so I was close up with what was going on in those time about getting rid of abuse to children. So I knew what the things were to look for, but I never saw them.
So you would have made that connection because you stayed with him, you were a visitor, a guest on many occasions at his homes, and nothing struck you as suspicious?
Nothing.
During that whole time?
Nothing.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.